The latest 2024 sci-fi thriller Levels is here to blow your mind. In a futuristic world, humanity has created a digital universe of virtual reality, powered by AI. What was meant to be a project benefiting all has turned into a giant gaming machine for a mad programmer. Under his control, the virtual world is on the brink of collapse. What will happen to the billions of virtual inhabitants? Joe, one of the virtual beings, was meant to live out his dull and uneventful life. However, an accidental encounter with the beautiful Ash in a bookstore changes everything. The two develop feelings for each other and fall in love. Just as their romance blossoms, Ash reveals a shocking truth to Joe.
I'm not from here.
Before he can react, a man in black approaches Ash.
Don't.
Joe rushes to her side, only to find her lifeless. As the man in black attempts to flee, Joe chases after him, but at a dead end, the man vanishes into thin air, leaving Joe frozen in disbelief. Joe's life plunges into darkness after Ash's death, and he is consumed by grief. His friend Oliver comes to console him, but Joe is too devastated to listen. Helpless, Oliver leaves. That night, overwhelmed by his pain, Joe loads a bullet into a revolver, ready to join Ash in another way. But when he pulls the trigger, something strange happens. Thinking the gun jammed, Joe fires at his sofa, and to his shock, the sofa is blown apart. Staring at the impossible scene, Joe is stunned. The gunshot alerts his smart home system, which assumes Joe is in danger and attempts to call the police. When the system goes silent, Joe aims the gun at his chin and fires again, but the bullet fails to shoot. Was the universe mocking him? In frustration, Joe shoots at the window. As he prepares to jump from the building, Ash's voice suddenly calls out to him, and time freezes. Suspended mid-air, Joe opens his eyes to find it's the next day. Thinking it was all a dream, checking his living room, he sees the revolver he bought last night is real, but the sofa, shot to pieces, is intact. Before he can process this, his smart system announces an urgent message from Ash. Excited yet anxious, Joe finds Oliver and shows him the phone receiving the message, asking if he sees it too. Confirming it's not a hallucination, Joe opens the message, a final note left by Ash. Knowing she might meet her end, Ash left the message asking Joe to retrieve a book for her. As Joe listens intently, a group of mysterious figures watches him through surveillance screens. Soon, Joe arrives at the bookstore. He finds the book Ash mentioned and opens it, discovering rows of indecipherable letters. Suddenly, Joe feels dizzy, though the sensation passes quickly, and he leaves in haste. Unbeknownst to him, he's followed by someone, a virtual identity used by the mysterious figures. The woman in charge orders them to recover what Joe took, and her team remotely activates virtual accounts to track him. Joe remains unaware until a warning message from Ash alerts him. Taking advantage of their momentary distraction, Joe rushes home, only to have the intruders block the door with their foot. Joe calls on his smart system for help, but the attackers close in, leaving no time for an alarm. Grabbing the revolver from the table, Joe attempts to defend himself. As the man steps inside, Joe fires a shot but narrowly misses. Out of bullets, Joe raises his hands in surrender. Suddenly, hurried footsteps approach outside. Joe hides behind the door. As the man bursts in, Joe tackles him, and the two fight ferociously. Joe, as if possessed by a god, quickly overpowers and defeats his opponent. Back home, Ash appears on Joe's screen, not a simple message this time, but a live video call. Sensing Joe's confusion, Ash explains everything. In recent years, rapid advancements in technology have led AI to unimaginable heights. Driven by passion, an engineer named Hunter dreamed big. By day, Hunter worked at a tech company collecting real-world data. In secret, he used this data to piece together and create his own virtual world. Such an ambitious project was impossible for one person. That's when Hunter met a mysterious coder who shared his vision. Together, they brought humanity's first virtual universe to life. At first, Hunter used the system for advanced research, greatly benefiting society. But as his status grew, so did his arrogance. Hunter began treating the virtual world like a giant game console. Every game resulted in the destruction and rebooting of billions of virtual lives. Joe is now the 598th generation of virtual beings. This means countless civilizations before him were destroyed by Hunter. Due to ethical concerns, this technology was eventually banned, but Hunter secretly hid the virtual world and continued his twisted games. Ash, after much struggle, managed to enter this world, falling in love with Joe. However, led to her discovery and deletion by Hunter before she could gather enough evidence. Now, Ash asks Joe to help her expose Hunter's crimes. Learning he is merely data in a virtual world shatters Joe's understanding of reality. In Ash's files, Joe finds a photo of his friend Oliver. Ash reveals that Oliver is the mysterious coder who worked with Hunter. Upon learning that the two knew each other, Ash was visibly shocked. He was supposed to have blocked other users, just like she did. Regardless, Ash urges Joe to seek Oliver's help, as only he can bring her back into the virtual world. Not long after, Ash receives a video from Oliver. She asks about accessing the virtual world's network portals. Oliver explains that these portals are scattered across the city and nearly impossible to locate quickly. Worried the call might be monitored, Oliver arranges to meet Ash in person before ending the conversation. Just then, alarms blare and Ash's home. Hunter's capture team is closing in. Barely escaping detection, Ash uses her tracker to find Oliver's location. When Oliver learns Ash wants to expose Hunter to save Joe, he's astounded. He never imagined someone could love a mere set of data. Moved, Oliver agrees to help. Following his guidance, Ash reaches a hotel with a network portal. She logs in with a password, re-entering the virtual world to reunite with Joe. The two embrace tightly after being apart for so long. Unbeknownst to them, Hunter is alerted to the intrusion and tracks Ash's login. At that moment, Ash was forcibly logged out by Oliver. The hotel's location had been compromised, and he urged her to leave immediately. Reluctantly, Ash leaves, but no sooner had she stepped out of the hotel than Hunter's men were already in pursuit. Catching them off guard, Ash launched a surprise attack, and the two instantly engaged in a fierce struggle. After a life-and-death battle, Ash ultimately overpowered her opponent, but as she tries to escape, she's knocked unconscious. Meanwhile, noticing that his girlfriend had suddenly vanished, Joe realized she must be in danger in the real world. He rushed to find Oliver for help. However, Oliver was in dire straits himself. Hunter had already tracked down his location in the real world. At this point, the only way to help Ash was to alter the virtual world, a decision that would impact the lives of billions. Oliver told Joe that after creating the virtual world, he left backup data behind, the same book Ash had asked him to retrieve. When Joe opened the book, all the data was transferred into his body. By simply touching the communication panel, Joe could gain control of the virtual world. Oliver then handed Joe the key to the room where the communication panel was stored, entrusting him with the mission to save the virtual world. Oliver, meanwhile, planned to rescue Ash in the real world. At the same time, Hunter was interrogating Ash about what the book contained. Suddenly, he received a message from Oliver asking to meet. Thus, the two most brilliant minds reunited in the virtual world after a long separation. Oliver was deeply disheartened by Hunter's actions, as they went against the original ideals of their creation. He tried to persuade Hunter to stop making mistakes and to treat the virtual universe as a real world. Hunter showed no reaction, as his true objective had already been achieved. Shortly after, Oliver felt a sharp pain in his neck. Hunter's invitation to meet had been a trap to eliminate him completely. With Oliver's physical death, his avatar in the virtual world also disintegrated into a mosaic of pixels. Joe arrived at the communication hub. Using his phone, he activated the equipment and placed his hand on a matching imprint on the screen. A searing pain coursed through his body. Hunter's subordinates quickly realized they were losing control of the virtual world and logged in to stop him. Seeing the enemies approaching from downstairs, Joe panicked. Remembering the key Oliver had given him, he opened a nearby cabinet and found a weapon inside. When the two broke into the room, Joe shot them without hesitation. Suddenly, Hunter's voice echoed around him. In the blink of an eye, Joe was transported onto a transport ship. Seeing Hunter, Joe immediately raised his weapon to fire, but Hunter was merely a digital projection composed of data, and as the creator, he had complete control over Joe.
I made you! And I unmake you.
Hunter adjusted a power meter, causing Joe's body to become increasingly blurry as he manipulated the controls. Hunter insulted Joe relentlessly, even making demeaning remarks about his girlfriend, driving Joe into a rage. In the next instant, a miracle occurred. Joe broke free of his restraints. Hunter was stunned. He frantically adjusted the data, but the control system had spiraled out of his grasp. Before Hunter could react, Joe shot him, effectively sending him back to reality. However, Hunter remained unfazed. He knew that by simply rebooting the virtual world, all anomalies would vanish. The moment he pressed the reset button, Joe's virtual world began to collapse. Skyscrapers disintegrated, and everything dissolved into nothingness. Learning of Joe's demise, Ash was overcome with grief. but Hunter remained indifferent, viewing the inhabitants of the virtual world as nothing more than data. To prevent Ash from causing further trouble, Hunter decisively ordered her execution. At that critical moment, a voice suddenly echoed through the room. It was Oliver. Simultaneously, a sphere on the table began to vibrate violently before vanishing into thin air. As this happened, Oliver's figure appeared on the screen.
What is happening?
Levels within levels, Anthony. To quote a favorite from this iteration, there are other worlds than this.
Fragments of data floated through the air, converging and reassembling into Joe's form within seconds. Everyone in the room was stunned. Taking advantage of Hunter's distraction, Joe materialized a gun and rescued Ash. The sight before him shattered Hunter's understanding. The virtual data he had created had crossed into the real world. With a single gunshot, Hunter fell, full of unanswered questions. In the end, Joe successfully saved the virtual world, while Oliver stood before him like a divine figure. Unable to contain his curiosity, Joe asked, "How many layers does this world have?" Oliver picked up a sugar crystal from a bowl, revealing that it represented the virtual world where Joe resided, created by Hunter with his assistance. The teacup symbolized Ash's reality. As for how many layers there are, or how many universes exist, even Oliver didn't know. After all, he himself was merely a plate a level above the teacup. As for how Joe managed to cross from the virtual world to reality, the answer was simple: by transferring the code. It becomes possible, but the bigger question remains if there truly are infinite layers to the world. Are we the plate, the teacup, or just a tiny sugar crystal?